But thank you all for joining Fairy God Boss and the Coding Blonde for our webinar on how to refine your resume to land your job in tech. We're so pleased to be here with all of you today. So a little bit about Fairy God Boss for those of you who may not be familiar. We are the largest career community for women, and we offer women a few different ways to engage on our platform for free. We offer career connections and the ability to give and get community advice. You can research companies, apply for jobs, and really get that inside intel on what a company's culture is like toward women. On that note, we also, we also have a virtual career fair coming up for women in tech. So if you're joining today's webinar, it's the perfect time to start getting your resume in shape for our virtual career fair on January 17th. You can see a few different examples of the roles that we'll be hiring and companies who will be joining us on the 17th. You can register at that link, and we'll also be sending you the link to register along with the recording of this webinar and follow-up. And we are so pleased to have the Coding Blonde herself, Masha, with us today to go over how we can get y'all's resumes in perfect shape for this virtual career fair. So for those of you who don't know, Masha is the founder of Coding Blonde, a blog dedicated to empowering women in technology and breaking stereotypes. She's on a mission to introduce women to the different areas and dimensions of tech and help them find the right resources to learn more about it and start their career in the industry. Her background is in marketing and market research, and she has worked in as many environments as you can imagine, from startups to big companies like Google, at a university, and in her own business, trying to figure out how to be an influencer, which don't think you are still figuring it out. I think you are an influencer and an expert in this space. So not only does she understand all of these landscapes, but she's also had to adapt her resume and working style to fit each one of them, which is one of the main reasons we're so thrilled to have her with us today. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Masha, the Coding Blonde.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was a lovely introduction. Hi guys, it's very nice to be talking to you today during this awesome webinar with Fairy God Boss. So as some of you might already know, my blog is all about empowering women in technology by creating fun and accessible content about the industry. As you can see, I've added some screenshots of some thumbnails of my YouTube videos, so you can find my content on YouTube, on Instagram, and also follow me on other social media. And I try to cover, like Mary said, different dimensions of technology, because if you were not in technology, I want to introduce you to the different concepts and help you feel comfortable with them. Or if you are in technology, there is a good chance that you're very specialized in one area, and I want to help you understand others. So for example, if you're in web development, you might not understand blockchain, and I want to give you content that is easy to consume, to understand it better. I also do interviews with inspirational women, and I focus a lot of attention on career and personal development, because I believe that in this day and age, it's super important because, we're finally empowered to create our own paths and kind of direct our own career ladders, I guess. So it's very important to talk about that and how to think about this proactively. And again, this is another reason why I'm very excited to be doing this workshop today. So I guess let's jump straight into the tips for your career, for your resume. The reason why you guys are here is because we're going to talk about your resumes and how to get them to the next level. So some of the tips that we have highlighted are, first of all, tailor your resume to each company that you apply to. If you really think about this, when you really want to work at a company, you will research the company and you will research what it's like to work at a company, what company culture is like, what motivations, what goals the company might have. So you will know all of that, and you will probably be very excited and add that to your resume. The thing is, companies are looking for people who are excited to work for them, right? They're not hiring you to stay there for a year and then leave. They want to hire you for the long term. They want to invest in you and all that stuff. So if you tailor your resume according to your research, the companies will really appreciate it, and they will really see that you are a candidate who is motivated to work there. So a good example of that is, at some point I was applying to a job in Netflix when I was trying to relocate here to the US. I was applying for a job in Netflix, and I talked to an HR manager, not in the team that I was applying for, but just a general HR manager that I could connect to. And she told me all about the company values and company culture, I guess, big pillars. So I went ahead and I basically formatted my resume to highlight how I'm performing and my experience in those particular pillars. So this is an example of how you can tailor it to a company. Or for example, if you're applying to a startup and you understand that you need to really demonstrate that you can do it all, because at a startup, yes, you have a job title, but you'll be wearing a lot of different hats at the same time. So you want to do your research, and you want to tailor your resume accordingly to that research. The next point, which is very important as well, is use keywords throughout your resume. And oh, by the way, also, Mary, if you have anything to add at any point, please jump in. And yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So yes, back to using keywords throughout your resume. And we will talk about this more later and show you some examples of how this is actually, of how this can be done. But why is this important? And what do we mean by this? So first of all, we mean use the keywords that are in the job description in your resume. So for example, if it says you need design skills and lists, specific tools that you would be required to use in the job, make sure that those tools are in the resume. Make sure that design skills or leadership skills, make sure you sprinkle those keywords across your all over your resume, because there are two scenarios of how, or I can see two scenarios of how your resume will be viewed. It will be either viewed and scanned by a machine that will literally be scanning for relevant keywords and then decide on whether it should send your resume to a human. So of course, keywords would help. Or it will be a human who is overflowing with paperwork and resumes and doesn't have that much time to really read into your resume. So unless they see the very clear keywords that you've outlined, they might not be able to spend enough time to really understand, what did you mean in that sentence? What did you mean in that bullet point? So yes, make sure you add keywords to your resume. Another point is ditch the summary statement. Summary statements are great, but they're pretty generic, right? Hardworking, detail-oriented, all these stuff. Hiring managers a lot of the times understand that you can write them, but you are using precious real estate on your resume by listing these things instead of showing them. So my recommendations would be, make sure that you show that you're hardworking or detail-oriented, or that you have leadership skills, or that you're a team player, by listing relevant experience and maybe adding another bullet point to that experience and really showing how you have empowered your team and led it through some difficult situations, or how you are super detail oriented based on that job that you've done, and make sure that you really show that in using your experience.
I totally agree, Masha. And I think the summary statement takes up precious real estate on your resume. And so many jobs these days also require a cover letter or a statement of interest. And that is a much more appropriate place to insert your value proposition versus it taking up the precious space on your one-page resume.
Absolutely. Yes. Cover letters are a great way to use all of that language and also demonstrate how motivated you are for this company. Again, having done research on the company. But yeah, ditch the summary statement. It's wasting your space that you can use for other things. And yes, the next point, which I feel like a lot of the times is overlooked by recent grads, I'd say, and I made that mistake a lot of the times. Quantify your skills. Quantify your skills and your results. So in those points, make sure that you use numbers, because a lot of the times people who hire you think in numbers. They want to understand how they can benchmark you against other candidates. And by quantifying those things and quantifying the results that you've achieved, you will help them. So when I was starting to apply to jobs at Google, a Googler who was very senior at the time, and still is, he helped me look through my resume, and he literally pointed out two things. And he said, okay, but can you put a number to this? Can you put a number to this? Can you put a percentage to this? Can you quantify it? Quantifying helps these people benchmark your progress. So make sure you do so. And finally, network. Like I've said in my first example, right? I was reaching out to people, to hiring managers, to understand what it's like to work at a company. And that normally gives you a much better chance of working at a company. I didn't get that particular job, but I have to say that the job at Google, the one that I got, was through networking, because a Googler referred me for it. And if you don't know the person, they can't refer you, right? Actually, a great friend of mine that used to be on my team, she literally just cold messaged, I guess, a person on LinkedIn who was in our team when there was a job opening. And she was like, hey, there's a job opening. I think I'm a great fit. Could you please refer me? Or you can also go to events and meet people. The thing is, it's all about meeting people, understanding what it's like to work at a company, and asking them to help you get there. Because if they understand that you are a great candidate, they will happily refer you, or they will happily give you a reference or connect you with someone else who they know is looking for a potential employee. So yes, network. Make sure that you approach it as, I guess as friendships. Don't think of it as, these cold transactional relationships, but make sure that you are doing this. Make sure that you're going to events, make sure that you're reaching out to people who might help you, and see how you can help them as well. Like I said, it's not just a transactional thing. Mary, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with your points on networking and on referrals specifically. I was on a panel recently, and one of the gentlemen on there had the greatest job application hack that I think allows you to learn more about a company, but also get that referral, which I had never thought of. Is a lot of major companies will give referral bonuses to employees who refer candidates who then get hired. So by finding team members and using it as an in to find out more about company culture and about the team, which you should want to know in the first place, and then asking for that referral, sometimes the employee has a financial incentive to want to help you as well. So just something to keep in mind.
Oh yeah, I've gotten a bonus for referring someone who has been accepted. It's real. It's good.
Yeah. I thought it was such a great hack.
It's amazing. They do have an incentive. So
definitely,
if you prove that you're a good candidate, it takes them 3 minutes to refer you, and then they might financially benefit from it. So
yeah. And I think stressing that, proving that you're a good candidate and backing up as to why is important. And then you also get that first person insight about what a company is like.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think we're ready to move into formatting and presentation. So thank you. First of all, the first thing that I want to mention is your resume should be 1 page long. Mary, would you agree?
Yes, 100%. Unless you have like decades upon decades upon your experience and you're very, very senior. But always defer to one page.
Exactly. I remember my sister was sending me her resume not that long ago, and she sent me 2 or 3 pages. I was like, "Can you fit this on one page?" She was like, "But I have so much experience," and she is a recent university grad. She has internship experience, and I was like, "Listen, if Elon Musk can fit all of his experience on one page of a resume, so can you."
Yeah.
So always remember that, guys. If Elon Musk can do it, you can definitely do it.
Totally. And I think that goes back to your point about tailoring your resume for each job. Everyone has such a wealth of experience. And while it's all applicable probably to any role you'll be doing, you're going to want to highlight certain experiences more depending on the role, industry, et cetera, of what you're applying for, which we will get into a little later.
Absolutely. So let's go through the some of the tips that are outlined here. So first of all, clear structure and design. I remember when I was at university, I had a flatmate who was trying to apply for a design job. So she decided to design her resume to go into kind of like this, I don't know how to say it, a vortex. And you would have to rotate the paper to really read her experience. And I was like, no, don't do this. This is not going to work. And I don't want to say I was right, but yes, I was right. Make sure that your resume is readable so that the person doesn't have to go like this or kind of, I guess, zoom in, zoom out, that they understand where everything is, that there is a clear logic to it, that there's a clear format. And you can find a lot of different templates online and a lot of different designs. Just make sure that you pick a very simple one, a very clear and clean one. Even if you're applying for a design role, what you're trying to communicate, and remember that your resume is kind of a communication method, right? You're trying to communicate your experience, you're trying to communicate your skills. So it has to be a clear message. You have to be able, the other person doesn't have to need your explanation on how to read it. So make sure that it is clear and easy to read. The next thing is make sure the formatting is consistent. The amount of times I've seen CVs where the fonts were different, the sizes of, the different bullet points were different. It's like, no, this doesn't make you look professional. Make sure that your resume looks professional. And it's just so important to make a good impression, because this is the only chance of the only chance that you have of making an impression on this person. So make sure that it's all clear and consistent, that there are no spelling errors. So going to point number 3, because that is the most unprofessional thing that you can, I guess, do. If you make spelling errors and the hiring manager sees them, they clearly will think of you as someone who doesn't, first of all, is not detail oriented. Let's start with that. But also someone who doesn't really care and who doesn't double check. And yes, you don't have to write super correctly, but when it comes to important documents and important things like job applications, you have to make sure that you are on your A game and use spell check or Grammarly. There's so many different tools that you can use for that. Another thing is get someone's feedback on it. You might think that it's the best resume ever and you might have gone over it so many times, but just make sure that you get someone's feedback on it before you send it over, because you never know what a set of fresh eyes might find that you haven't found yet. Mary, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I can't stress enough spell check. I'm always so disappointed when I get misspellings and different things and job applicants, because, I think it does speak to being detail oriented, and mistakes do happen. But I also think getting someone else's feedback on it will help you avoid spelling mistakes too.
Absolutely, because sometimes I have trouble with some spelling some words as someone who's, for whom English is a second language. I sometimes make mistakes in the same words, and I just don't see it a lot of the times. And getting someone else's opinion who makes mistakes in different words than me, but will notice the mistake in my words, will help with just that, even if you don't have spell check. And also, it will help you understand whether you're the way you're writing and the way you are formatting your CV is easily digestible, because at the end of the day, you won't be there with the HR manager saying, okay, so you read this part first and then you go here and then you go here. And this part tells you all about my skills. No, they will be there by themselves, and seeing how another person reacts to your resume might be very insightful onto how an HR manager who has never met you will react to your resume.
Absolutely. And I also think on this note, we had someone email in, ask about how to highlight coding boot camps. And, my first inclination is to put it under your educational experience. You can list what you're learning, whether it's Java, full stack, whatever, under your experience and your proficiency level. And then, Masha, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how you can highlight projects on your resume as well.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, just on that note, and then you can quantify those skills, right? You can quantify those skills and kind of put an asterisk and be like, currently learning in the bootcamp or currently in progress. But you can also quantify those skills of those things that you are learning or are planning to learn. And when it comes to projects, that is so important, especially in technology, especially if you are in a technical field, because those demonstrate your skills from start to end, and those demonstrate your, a lot of the times, initiative and entrepreneurial abilities, which are very important in the tech world, because they show that you can take a project and start working on it. So projects are very important, and again, you can tailor them to the position that you are applying to and to the company that you're applying to. Let's say you are applying for a data analyst position, right? So you will obviously, you probably won't highlight your projects where you were a social media manager or where you were doing stuff with web design necessarily, but you will tailor and you will put the projects that are related to the job that you're applying for. So data science in this case. You can also put projects that are, I guess, outside of the scope of that particular role to showcase that you are a well-rounded individual. But again, it comes back to your research on the company. So for example, again, when I was applying to a role at Google, I knew that they wanted me to show how I care about the world, talk about the different projects that I've worked on. And so I did that. I showed that those specific projects that might be relevant to that company. So always think about that. And finally, make sure that there's logical progression. Like we've already said, tailor your resume to the company and tailor the progression of your CV or your resume, still European sometimes, to the role that you are applying for. So, and to your specific case. So for example, a recent graduate might highlight their education on top because they just left university, and so this is their top of mind, and then the experience is not as, they've had some internships, let's say, and they think it's not as relevant. Then highlight the education that is, super relevant to this particular job, or vice versa. For example, I put education at basically the bottom at this point in my resume because yes, it is relevant, but after I finished university, after I finished my master's, I've had so many different experiences, and here are the relevant bits, and here are the relevant numbers to your particular company and to this particular role. Mary, do you have anything?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I hope you all will get the sense that tailoring your resume for each job is so important. But I think to the project point, sometimes, highlighting the projects you've done in a boot camp or in a graduate program or even an undergrad could be way more relevant than maybe leading with your most recent job. So it's really going to depend on the research and information you found out about the company and what the role is asking for. On that note, I think we're ready to go into using strategic keywords, right? And I did also want to note before we dive in, I see some folks asking questions. We will have plenty of time at the end to answer them. So I promise you, we're not ignoring you. We're just saving them till the end. So keywords are buzzwords, which Masha mentioned at the beginning to use for your slides. And let me just turn on my camera too so you guys can see me while I'm talking. There we go. These are really important. So you should have a raise your hand function on your screen. So raise your hand if you've ever felt like you have applied and your resume has just gone into a black hole and maybe you never hear anything from a role, or like 6 months later you get like, we've moved forward with another candidate email. Like, yeah, so some folks raising their hands. I think that's happened to all of us. Whoops. Going too far ahead. I think that's all happened to all of us. You just feel like your resume is going nowhere. And that's because a lot of companies will use applicant tracking systems, which Masha referred to as where a machine goes through and it will pull your resume based on what is included there and if it's going to be passed on to a human or not. And even when humans are reviewing it, they're looking for particular things because they can be inundated with tons of applications. So you want to use keywords that match or align with the job description and highlight your work experience, and you should weave them into your resume. And so one reason we wanted to bring this up is because at Fairy Godboss, we often get questions like, okay, I've heard of keywords. What are they? How do I know when and how to use them? So we wanted to spend a little bit of time going over that. So I pulled this job description from our website about a UX designer with a company, and I just highlighted some of the information about the role and wanted to call out some important keywords that I sat with our head of UX design that she would be looking for in hiring someone. So relationships, I think we can all agree that relationships are critical no matter what role or industry you're working in. Written and verbal business communication skills. In terms of hard skills, for this particular role, Adobe Creative Suite, especially InDesign. So you would definitely want to highlight that on your resume and maybe your skills section or in a description of a job or project that you've done. Building interactive prototypes is a plus. So if you've done that, that signals that that is something they're really looking for, as it's an added bonus to this job. And then we also highlighted including like creating user requirement specifications, building personas, scenarios, task analysis, flow charts, and organization and navigation models and detailed wireframes would be important to highlight. Best practices and strategic solutions. And again, more persona creation, heuristic evaluations, usability testing, focus groups, competitor evaluations, and usable and best-in-class new products. So these were a few of the skills that we thought would be most important to highlight. So let's take a look at an example on how you can do that. So here is a resume of a UX designer. And so if everyone will take a few minutes and read the description quickly. And then I'd love if you want to use the chat function, and maybe Masha, you can read out what some folks are saying, since I can't, since I'm sharing the screen, I can't see it. If you all would weigh in on like what, based off the job description we just looked at, I'll go back so you can look at it again. And now at the resume, what keywords do you think are missing? What would you want to add in? We'll just take like a minute to do that. Masha, can you see the chat?
Yes, I can. I think people are thinking at this point.
I know a few pop out to me, but I have the advantage because I've already reviewed this, but we'll go over. So while you all are thinking about that, because we want to leave plenty of time for questions, I'm going to move forward. But as you see things, feel free to pop it into the chat. So first thing we want to highlight of where you can put something. So lead and deliver all product design. You could add in a simple phrase, including interactive prototypes. Because in that job description, they said if you could build that, that's a plus. That's an added bonus for us if you can do that. So making sure you focus on that could really make sure your resume stands out, and we'll flag it in that automated system.
Jose has added keywords are missing: communication, building relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that too, Jose. Thank you for weighing in. So then looking at this, we suggest taking out this sentence here, and instead you could replace it with something about your experience in persona creation, testing, focus groups, competitor evaluations to trigger the keywords. So really highlighting your experience and the things that they were asking for is super important. And again, it will help trigger those keywords. I think particularly hosting focus groups, that's a skill that not everyone has. And so I think highlighting that, particularly for a UX role, is really important. And then lastly, we just took a look at here, if you're looking at, you're testing all of these email initiatives and you're getting higher conversion rates, what did that result in? The description talked about having best practices and unique strategic solutions. So by taking and adding on this simple phrase, resulting in the development of company-wide best practices, you can really highlight your experience of doing A/B testing and moving the needle for your company. And then also, not only did it result in higher conversion rates, but you were also able to develop best practices to share with your team, company, etc. So that's just a few little examples on how you could add in strategic keywords. But again, it's really important to tailor your resume, which can seem overwhelming. So one hack that I have is making a Word document of just pre-formatted bullet points of all of your experience. So anything and everything you could ever think of. And then when you're tailoring your resume, you have a go-to document of pre-created phrases of your experience that quantifies them and uses those keywords that you can then just copy and paste and plug into a resume and tailor on an as-needed basis to save you a little bit of time. So with that, we're going to go into questions. Some of you have already done it, but feel free to use the Q&A function. And then I'm just going to share this with you all. Masha and I would love for you to stay in touch with Fairy Godboss and the Coding Blonde. You can follow us on all social media. If you want to sign up for the Fairy Godboss newsletter, you can easily sign up by texting FGB to 345-345. We've also included our personal emails. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be sending you all follow-up with the recording of the webinar, how to stay in touch with Fairy Godboss, how to stay in touch with the Coding Blonde, and of course, how to register for our virtual career fair on January 17th. And with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so we can moderate the Q&A.
Awesome.
All right. And then you also have the ability to ask questions anonymously. So if you maybe don't feel comfortable asking your question publicly, you have that option. All right. So let's just dive right in. So one person would like to know, how should we approach the team members on LinkedIn? So far, I have never gotten a response for my referral request. Masha, do you want to dive in on that one first?
Yeah, it's tricky because you never know first of all, what the person is going through. So they might not respond, not because it's not because you've asked them a question, but it might be something unrelated to you. But also, I would really make sure that, first of all, so yeah, go into that understanding that not everybody's going to respond. It's just a reality. But if you do write a message to this person, look at their profile, understand what they've done, maybe highlight some of those things. People really like to be appreciated. And so comment on some of their achievements, and maybe, I don't know, congratulate them on some of those things, and say, great job, I really admire you. I would love to talk to you about opportunities at a company. And also, don't make it too aggressive, right? Make sure that you are just reaching out saying, hey, I love your profile, love what you've done, and maybe do more specific stuff, and say, if you have a minute, I would really appreciate getting a coffee if you are in the same place, or jumping on a quick call if you're able to, or just maybe ask for a message back, their opinion on the company, and maybe their advice on how to apply for a company, for a position at a company, at the company that they're working for. The thing is, we're all humans, and think about, how would you like to be approached? How would you, how would you, what message would make you want to respond, and what message would make you want to help this person out?
Totally. And to piggyback on that, I always suggest asking for 15 minutes and suggesting specific times, particularly if you want to have a phone call, because then you're making it a little bit easier on someone and their schedule, to be able to say, do you have 15 minutes on X, Y, and Z dates?
Yes,
particularly if people are busy.
And I heard, I know of an example of a girl who did, I guess, a cold email to someone, and she literally got 15 minutes to chat to this person while they were on their way from work to lunch. Like, this is also an opportunity. If they don't have time, be ready to jump in and do something like that. And
totally.
Yeah, connect with them then.
And you never know if you don't ask. And sometimes, even in my experience, having done cold outreach before, I maybe didn't connect with the person I was directly trying to speak with, who I originally reached out to. But what she did is she looped me in with their recruiter. And I was able to speak with their recruiter about the company and find out information, which sometimes is even better, because the recruiter is the one who's doing the actual recruiting, right? Okay, someone would like to know, could you explain what you mean by quantify skills, in which way, and to what you should give numbers to?
So quantifying skills is a tricky one, I would say. Visually representing it is probably the easiest bit, and you can have either like a graph where you can kind of fill it out. So for example, the graph itself is 100% and you feel like you're at the 70 mark. But I guess or you can also have, I don't know, infographics, for example, the little people that you can kind of have in bold or empty or white. I don't know, like however fits you the format of your CV. But I guess a good way to start thinking about quantifying your skills is, first of all, dividing them into categories, beginner, intermediate, advanced, because let's be honest, we do that already without quantifying, right? You can just say beginner, blah, 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 all those skills, like, I don't know, Spanish at a beginner level. And then think within the beginner, how far ahead are you? Because if you divide it in that sense, I guess in that approach, it's kind of dividing into 3 different parts. So you already have 30%, well, 33%, I guess, like 66%, and then the other 33. So you can kind of see that way. But visual representation doesn't need the exact percentage, and I guess it's very difficult to put a hard exact percentage. But when thinking it from the, I guess, with the beginner, intermediate, and advanced in mind, it might make it easier for you. Mary, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think one example that comes to mind, like particularly for the developers on the webinar, are there things that you've done per se in your code that's increased page load time? And can you assign that a percentage? By working on X, Y, and Z projects, you were able to increase page load time by X percent, whatever it is. Which to your point, it can often be times hard to quantify because we are doing so much. But maybe it's, it's a lesson in maybe keeping track of the projects you're working on and what the results are, which I think will not only help you in building your resume, but if you have performance reviews, one-on-ones with your boss, so you can really articulate the value that you've driven for the organization. So it's kind of twofold in helping you show your value to your current employer, but you can also take that data and highlight it on your resume.
Absolutely. That's actually what I've done. What I've done when I joined Google, I created a Google Doc in my personal account, and I kept tabs of all the projects that I've done and, the numbers when I started working on those projects, and then, kind of checking in and updating it so that I can actually quantify those, the results.
Mm-hmm. And we are getting some questions about resume templates, how you can keep it to one page. So in that theme, if you go to fairygodboss.com, we have, and you search, Masha just shared it in chat about resume templates. She's amazing. You can access that for inspiration. And then in terms of ways you can build it, I have built resumes in everything from PowerPoint to Pages, and a lot of those programs will have templates that you can borrow from as well. Masha, I don't know if you have any other tips or hacks you want to share on that.
I normally keep my CV updated in Google Docs. I'm an avid user of that system, and I just download it as a PDF whenever I need to download the new version and send it to someone. Because it's easy to also track versions and see how you've edited it and all that stuff. So that's the system that I use.
Yeah. Awesome. This is a great question from Danielle. She says, "Hi, thank you for this webinar." You're welcome, Danielle. I hope you've enjoyed it. She says, "I want to move forward in my career as a database manager or even a data analyst, but my background is in nonprofit databases. How do I take that next step?" I can give my 2 cents really quickly, having made a similar transition from the nonprofit world into the private sector. And this is where I would really recommend getting that third-party feedback, because I guarantee you have skills that you have developed working in your nonprofit database that will 100% transfer to being a database manager or a data analyst. It's just figuring out how you talk about them. So maybe finding someone who's already in that type of role and in that industry that you want to be in, and just asking them for feedback on your resume and telling them what you currently do, and then how you can adapt that description to match the industry jargon.
Absolutely. And to add on that, I am currently reading a really, really good book. It's called The Career Manifesto. I don't know if you've read it, Mary. It's awesome.
Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't read it yet, though.
Amazing. Highly recommend to everyone who is on the chat, The Career Manifesto. But it says that to create your career roadmap, right? So if you know where you want to end up, right? Basically do your homework, read books, read professional publications on that subject, talk to people, meet with people, see what their day-to-day like and what skills they're using, because then you can create a list of skills that you might be missing and work on those so that you can basically get yourself to the point where you are a qualified professional.
Definitely.
And this applies to any field. Whether you're trying to transfer from a non-tech position to a tech position or vice versa, or within tech from one field to another, just, create that roadmap for yourself.
Mm-hmm. This is a great question. Oh, I just lost it. Can robot resume scanners detect keywords from PDF files saved from Adobe Illustrator files? So in my experience, most companies, and I'm definitely not an expert in the scanners, but most companies will let you know what file types to upload. So I would think if they're asking for that file type, then whatever AI system they're using will be able to pick that up. Masha, I don't know if you have any direct experience with that.
I don't have any direct experience, but back in 2003, I guess, I was experimenting with word recognition with my scanner because I was a nerd and that's what I did in my free time. And it was pretty good already. But yeah, stick to the format of the resume that's the company is asking for, because they're asking for that specific format for a reason.
Totally. This is a great question. Regarding keeping your resume readable and in a logical order, what if older experience is more relevant, but is perhaps second on the list for work experience?
Wait, could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
So if keeping it in order, but the more relevant experience is maybe second or third on your work experience, to me, I think that's a great time to really stress that experience in your cover letter as well. And then make sure, when you get an interview, you most certainly will, you have stories and examples that directly align to that experience you want to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also, I would keep it probably in order of, in the chronological order on your resume as well, but just make sure that you fill out more, I guess, of the bullet points about that particular experience and why that was relevant, and really highlight that one. And maybe from the other experience that's the most recent, maybe you do have some parts that are relevant to this job. It's just really dig into your memories, dig into your notes that you're keeping to see if there is something relevant, because you might find it. You never know, because they're always transferable skills. You learn them everywhere, and as long as you can kind of communicate why they're transferable, that's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think anyone, particularly if anyone on this webinar is looking to make a career transition, and I think we have a few, it's just figuring out how to communicate them and reposition yourself to show, like maybe you spent your time, I'll just use my own experience, for example. I was a fundraiser, so it's a ton of relationship management before I came into the role that I'm currently doing. So it was figuring out, how do I take that relationship management and make it applicable to what I'm doing? And I think particularly, like, if I wanted to be a developer, that relationship management would be so key, because most of the time you're part of a team. You're not working in a silo. So that ability to communicate effectively and manage relationships and build a network is applicable to any team setting. So just a little micro example there. I love this question. I also think it's funny, but how do you properly spell front-end web developer on a resume? Everyone spells it differently with different examples of spellings. As a company where our company name is Fairy God Boss, lowercase g, lowercase b, all one word, I can relate to seeing different spellings. So what I recommend is seeing how they're listing it in their job description and on their site, and how other folks in that company are spelling it, and then matching it to their spelling. I think that's really important. And I think it even goes with companies with unique names like ours, to really match that style and see how the company is using it, because it'll also signal that you're detail oriented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, what else do we have?
We had a question from Carrie in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
What percentage match should you shoot for? If it's too high, you can be passed by, and too low, you are passed over as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's going to be specific to companies probably on what they're looking for. So I'm hesitant to give you an exact number. But I think you want to get enough. It's that conversation, right, about, being too experienced, under experienced, whatnot, what have you, want to do a match to where you're hopefully going to get through. But I think once you get through the system, even better to show that you're qualified and you're not overqualified, or maybe even if you are, but you really want to make that transition into this company or role. I think that's where your network comes in too. And like having an in to the company who can help advocate for you on your behalf as to why you want to do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. And just being sure in, I guess, yourself, because if you think that you might be overqualified for a role, or you think you might be underqualified, and a lot of the times women tend to think the latter, unfortunately, but be very honest with yourself. Do you think you're qualified? Do you think you will be able to learn at this job, like for yourself? Think about that, because the thing is, this job is going to be, the next step to your next job, and hopefully then to the next job. So always think about this. Will this be a learning experience for me, or will I just struggle every day, or will I be bored before applying for a position? Mm-hmm. And kind of once you assess that for yourself, I think that would be, I guess, an answer for how to position your skills on the resume and how to tailor it to this job.
Okay, this is another great question that I think you are so well suited to answer, Masha, given your experience. Are there any tricks when looking to relocate to another country, the US, for example? Are there any differences to hire people, or what should be highlighted or include first or least in your CV or resume?
All right. So when you're trying to relocate, and when that's your, I guess, primary goal, and you don't necessarily care as much as for the actual, you obviously do care for the position and everything, but your primary goal is to relocate. Decide on which countries you're looking to relocate to, and then see if there are any different visa regulations for those particular companies, and maybe for those particular countries. So when I was trying to apply for a job in Europe, I remember specifically looking at Ireland, because Ireland is makes it easier for companies to sponsor visas for candidates that speak languages that are outside of the EU. So basically, with Russian as my first language, I could much easier get a visa for a job that required Russian. You see, so thinking about looking at visa regulations and seeing if there are any different things that will make it, any different skills that will make you stand out for the visa process. It is very difficult to get a company to sponsor you for a visa, and that's originally why I started learning how to code, right? Because I wanted to make myself more marketable. Think about making yourself more marketable, more unique, and seeing if there are any skills that will kind of elevate you and make sure that the company hires you versus, not making sure that the company hires you versus other candidates, but that your skills stand out so much that it will prefer to hire you, and it will be easier for the company to prove to the government where you are that, yes, this person needs a visa. Because essentially, once they decide, okay, we are happy with this person, we're happy to go through all of the painful process to get them a visa, they then have to go to the government and to the immigration services and be like, okay, so we're hiring this person, and this is why we're hiring them and not somebody else who is super talented within this country. This is why this candidate really stands out for us. So think about making your skills very unique, and also think strategically in terms of countries and, visa regulations and skills. So yeah, I hope I've answered that question.
Great. We have time for one more question, and I think this is a great one to end on. What tips or advice would you give to students or individuals who are just getting into the world of development and coding?
I would say figure out what you enjoy. Work on try different things if you haven't figured that out. But if you know what makes you happy, what technologies you just feel elevated and want to discover on your weekend. Let's say, you know, you're so passionate about this one particular subject, and you are willing to spend your free time learning, investigating it, and see how you can maybe grow in that field. Because if you really enjoy something, if you really are happy doing something, then why not make it, I guess, your career? Why not follow your passion and just make sure that you are in that particular field? So if you're new to development, just try different things, see what you like. And once you find that one particular thing, or maybe two, or maybe three, and just pursue them further and see which one stands out the most, and then maybe explore what else is out there in that specific field. Maybe you can move into those roles later on with time. So yeah, find what you like and try to build your career. Again, you know, with the career roadmap, see where you can end up doing that and what would make you very excited, and see how you can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to Masha for being here and giving us your insight and wisdom. I know I learned a lot, so I hope everyone who joined us did as well. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar, some resources, and how you can stay in touch with both the Coding Blonde and Fairy Godboss, as well as how you can sign up for our virtual career fair if you are on the job hunt. So thank you all, and thank you, Masha.
Thank you so much, Mary. This was really fun, and thank you for everybody for joining. And for all of the awesome questions.
Yeah, really great questions. Thank you all so much. And enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.